and welcome to episode 21 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gaming Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, formerly known as No One. Joining me for this fine recording session are one Stephen Howard.
A humble sparrow with nothing to my name.
Amanda Howard.
Welcome home, the North remembers.
Nick Castillo.
Who needs riches when you can make a girl laugh?
And last but certainly never ever least, Gary Delaney.
Someone who's starting to believe that Ramsay Bolton has turned over a new page, and he will never let Sansa get hurt because he gave Peter Baelish his word.
Yes, totally. Nothing bad will happen from that part there.
Hero of the Revolution keeps his word.
All right, we have gathered together here in this fine recording session to discuss episode 3 and 4 from season 5. Episode 3, titled High Sparrow. Tommen and Marjorie wed. Arya has trouble adapting to her new life. Littlefinger reveals his plan to Sansa. Jon gives his first orders as Lord Commander. Tyrion and Varys arrive in Volantis. To start off here just a little bit, I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't have much about the opening scene here, but I thought it was interesting, the House of Black and White with all of the god statues surrounded there. You don't really pick up on like a lot of them in the beginning, but they show that heart with the fire surrounding it as being the god of the... What is his name? I forget.
The red
Lord
god.
of Light.
Yeah, the Lord of Light. Yeah. But I wanted to talk about here is like the scene that comes after this is basically Tommen gets married, but you could tell by like Cersei's look throughout the wedding and everything like that, she's still very distrustful of everything that's going on between Tommen and Marjorie. And Marjorie is planting those seeds of mistrust about Cersei to Tommen when they're together after the wedding night there. So what do we think like Marjorie's plan is? Is it really just to get Cersei out and away from Tommen there to have full control over the king there, or is there more going on? Stephen?
I mean, yes, she said it. She said it before. She doesn't want to be a queen. She wants to be the queen. And how do you become the queen? Well, you tie yourself to the king. And how is she going to tie herself to the king? By being very exhausted the day after, as she so eloquently puts it. She is trying to get pregnant. She is going to try to get rid of any competitors for influence. And she's trying to consolidate her position. Just like it's fairly, I would say it's fairly simple ploy that every single person who ever goes into King's Landing tries to do. Get into your position, consolidate your position, and then thrive, I guess. And so we'll see if... And I feel like, to an extent, especially like with the, oh, your son kept me up all night last night sort of thing, that was like, oh my God, are you really doing this to her? And then, I don't know what to call you. Queen Mother or Dowager Queen? Like, she's rubbing it in her face. And let's see how that goes for her.
I don't know. I think that I don't think she has any ill will. At least personally, I don't think Marjorie is up to an evil plan. She wants to be the queen, but I think she just wants to get rid of Cersei because as Tommen is very young and very impressionable, like Cersei is just like, if Cersei's around, Tommen's just going to be a puppet ruler to Cersei's will. So she's trying to let Tommen spread his wings, and I'm sure it's just a comfort thing too. It's just like, it's hard to like build her relationship with her husband if the mom is always around. So it's just like, oh, give us some space. I think she could be a little more tactful in the way she came across to that conversation, but it's Game of Thrones. Who said it was going to be well written?
Shots fired.
Right?
Honestly, like, I can see her needing, like, Cersei's another, as long as Cersei's around, like, Tommen's gonna have that other person. If Cersei's out of the picture, Tommen's gonna turn to her more. I think Marjorie knows that. I don't think it's entirely ill will, but I do find it interesting that she's throwing these shots before she's achieved her goal of being calm and entirely reliant on her. Cersei has an awful lot of power here. Nick?
Yeah, I agree. I think that she's probably somewhere in the middle, in my opinion. I don't think that she's overtly trying to drive Cersei away, but she does realize the amount of power she has, and it's gone to her head a little bit because she's really laying it on thick. Like, yeah, the Dowager Queen. I think she even outright says, like, you may be a grandmother before the next moon comes or something like that. And it's like, oof, I mean, doesn't this episode even start with that little throwback about Maggie, right? The worm or whatever, the omen about a younger queen will come and throw you down or cast you down, or was that in the previous episode?
That was, I think, the first episode of season 5.
Yeah, that was the previous episode.
First episode. So yeah, so we're kind of seeing the fruition come together of that omen in this episode, where Cersei does still have power, but she's on the thin side of it in this episode. Back to you, Tyler.
Yeah. And I'm going to take my second question here up front, too, because it's a lot about, too, changes from the book, which we'll talk a little bit about, but not go too far into the stuff that changed from the book here, because it leads into more spoiler stuff for what happens next. But one of the next scenes we get to is Sansa basically returning home. They like her and Baelish stop at Moat Cailin, and Sansa's like, "What are we doing here? We're going home," basically. And then he drops the other bomb on her that she's going to marry a Bolton, not Roose Bolton, because Sansa hates the Boltons for what they did to her family, but it's going to be Ramsay Bolton, who we all know, as Gary so aptly names, the hero of the Revolution, aka a terrible person.
He's a great guy.
My question is here basically, and I wrote it down here, is WTF is Littlefinger doing? He is trading away the most valuable piece he has to basically controlling not only the Eyrie, also the North itself, of like some hold of the North. It is his most valuable piece, and he is trading it away to some family, which I'm going to jump in slightly a little bit into the next episode here too, but he talking with Ramsay, he doesn't know Ramsay Bolton. A huge mishap by Littlefinger there. So it's like, what is he doing here? What on earth is going on with Littlefinger there? So Steven.
Yeah, I entirely agree with you. It is out of character. It is it's weird that because he is so much about solid, tangible gains and influence, I guess, increases. And you are right. He is trading away his most valuable. He is trading away the queen on the chessboard for promise of some more pawns. That is, I don't understand the point of that even slightly. And not only that, I don't understand exactly where he gets the authority to marry off Sansa. At what point was he given protector of Sansa, like in any sort of official capacity? And
he's her uncle, or he is her uncle. Yeah,
that doesn't give you the permission to marry her off.
Last living relative.
I don't think so. But that being said, it just doesn't make any sense to me either. It is a bad play. It seems not to really have any point to it because he already has the key to the North. Sansa is the key to the North. Why would you marry him off to anyone? And I think maybe the only thought he has is this consolidates the northern power between the Warden of the North for the Lannisters and the Stark, heir to the North. Put them together and you have the North locked up. But he, in that point, does not have the North locked up. In that point, he doesn't have anything. And so I don't know what his play is here. I don't understand it.
Actually say that it was him trying to bargain with the Boltons, and at this point Sansa's not worth anything to anyone. If she married some other High Lord, she would just, if she married Robin Arryn, she'd be the Lady of the Eyrie, and so it really doesn't. I don't know. I think Littlefinger's just trying to get some power when he can, and I put down in my notes, like, I don't remember this terrible motivational speech he gave about convincing her that the best place to be is around her enemies to take revenge. Like, I think but it's totally for his political gain, and I think he if Sansa stays alive, Sansa assumes that she owes him something. So that's and the Boltons think they owe him something. Like, he's just playing. It might be getting pawns back, but ultimately Sansa's a pawn to him at this point. Like, that's my opinion. I can't see who's next, so I think it goes to Steven. Okay, Nick.
I'm
So
also
you're
muted, but I said no, it's Nick, and then I said I get it, but I was saying that while I was muted, so nobody heard me.
Okay, we can go to Nick then.
I was going to say, I think that you're right, Gary, that Sansa is just a pawn to him. But rather than think, what is Littlefinger doing? I think that the Boltons may have reached out to Littlefinger. Hearing that he has some power in the north, I think as the closest person probably aligned with what's going on, or the next strongest power closest to the north is going to be the Vale. And so Littlefinger does have, as Lysa's for a day, he did consummate the marriage, we heard quite clearly. I think that he is in charge of the Vale, and so he does have a substantial army. Rather than have the two powers bash it out between each other and him lose all of his assets, I think the Boltons probably reached out to him and said, hey, Tywin's not here anymore. We need something else. We need a better deal for this, but we don't trust you. But you're the next best thing. And so in that sense, if the Boltons reached out to Littlefinger, all speculation, Littlefinger's only playable card is Sansa. I mean, he's not going to end up, living with the Boltons or being a warden under them or anything like that. It would be that he would have to give them Sansa. In turn, they agree to help back him for whatever he plans to do as far as the consolidation thing goes. That was my thought. Not so much that Baelish is scheming, but he's always looking for a better deal. And so I think that probably the Boltons might have started that one. My 2 cents.
I still don't see where the solid concrete gains that Littlefinger gets here. And it also comes back to the idea that what Tyler said. He doesn't, Littlefinger doesn't even know the person who he's promising this to. He has no idea of the character of this person, if they're going to follow through on their word. And Littlefinger, of everyone in the Westeros, knows best a word means nothing because you can break it like that and trick everyone around you.
That's fair.
So I don't get what he sees that he's getting out of this. I don't think that he's getting the North. In no way is he getting the North. And favors. Since when does Littlefinger care about what favors he gets? He cares about the concrete facts that he gets. He cares about He cares about money. He cares about people explicitly under his thumb. I don't think he cares about, oh, well, Lord Mace Tyrell owes me a favor, so it's not a thing.
A man without motives is a man no one suspects.
Thanks,
I
Nick.
think that was it. He said that.
So I would go back to Gary's point here about Sansa being a pawn, and that kind of going back to then Steven's point. Sansa is not really a pawn. She's the last surviving that we know of, that the world knows of, Stark family member there, which means she is the key to the North. And as we kind of know, basically, the North knows no king but whose last name is Stark there, basically. So there is a huge amount of weight behind her name. So it just being a Stark basically helps unify the North even more. But again, it goes back to like Littlefinger just basically hasn't done his homework here. There, he thinks giving Sansa to the Boltons unifies the North, and then somehow that gets him more power or control over the North. But it really doesn't, because, like Steven said, words can be broken there and everything like that. And he again hasn't done his homework on who he's marrying Sansa off to. So it just doesn't seem like a fully thought out plan. It seems kind of like maybe the beginning of like the last grasp for trying to control this here, to trying to put some control into his plans. Amanda.
So this is going to reach ahead into the next episode a little bit, but they have a conversation, Sansa and Peter Baelish, about. He mentions specifically that Stannis is going to come down and then he'll take Winterfell. And at first, I don't understand why he's marrying her to Roose if he just wants Stannis to come in. But I did have the thought of like, one, this puts her present, like she's here physically in the castle, so it's hard to put them off too much. But on the other hand, I thought maybe he's marrying her to it, hoping that he's so bad, and then after Stannis rescues her, he can marry her himself. Oh no, food for thought. That he is definitely planning on her being basically single by the time Stannis takes over this. That her
Mhm.
getting named Wardeness in the North. I wonder if he has a plan for doing something for Stannis so that he would get married to her.
Or there's a different hero of the North. Like he's got co-conspirators in Winterfell. But
It's true.
I think maybe for Baelish, like the way he talks to Sansa is like, oh well, the best way to take revenge is from the inside. Is maybe Baelish thinks there might be a chance that Sansa will just murder these two dickbags, and technically, the whatever the wife, and then ta-da, with like with three people dead, she becomes the Warden of the North. So
the only thing that I have not the only thing, but the thing I have a qualm about there is, of all Littlefinger's numerous contacts, he's never really shown to have any contacts in the North besides the Starks. That's it. And when
who originally gave the deal to Bolton for the Red Wedding? Wasn't that
Tywin.
because he even says my deal was with Tywin. Now Tywin's gone. Now who do I have a deal with? And that's when Littlefinger goes on about, oh, we'll create an alliance, and it's like that makes no sense. An alliance between the North and the Eyrie couldn't even bring down the powers that were before. You think they can now after they've been thoroughly defeated? Makes no sense. But I'm also kind of wondering, just I understand your thought that maybe he's putting Sansa in as his own agent. Maybe he honestly believes that Sansa is his person now, and she's going to kill, Ramsay and the other Lord Bolton. But he would explicitly tell her that. Sansa is a meek little thing. He's known Sansa's a meek little thing, and she's kind of sort of come out of her feathers, like that. She did that entire feather thing in one of those last episodes. But she's still not murder person. She's just, duplicitous sort of. The only way that Tywin or that Littlefinger is going to have Sansa murder someone is if he goes up and says, "So, this is the deal."
With the cinematography, I think when she first arrives to meet the Boltons, she has very much a scowl on her face. Like in my mind, is that you assume there might be the first thing she does is she slaps the Boltons in the face, like, you fucking killed my family. But then she just like kind of switches gears and was like, oh well, hello my lord. Like I don't know, I think they're trying to set her up as like somebody's gonna play the broken duck and then stab everyone in the face. So I don't know.
He did do a nice job of like showing her taking their measure and then like switching to choosing to smile. So I don't know. I wonder it could also be like a difference in the books. Like the books don't cover this part, so maybe the movie is just picking it up now.
So then
You
that
think
was kind of
making it up or fucking it up?
so that was going to be my kind of follow-up part here too, is at this point in time our Sansa is not in Winterfell here. this whole marrying off Ramsay to a Stark is supposedly, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, Amanda, it's supposedly Arya Stark in the books.
Supposedly, it's not
The
actually.
friend,
It's
right?
not actually, yeah.
Yeah, the friend of Sansa
Yep.
knows enough about knows enough about Winterfell to be able to answer questions if she's questioned.
Oh,
So, and then Baelish is still holding on to Sansa, I think, basically as part of, like, he's still in this part in the story here. They have left the Eyrie because winter has come to the Eyrie, and you cannot stay in the Eyrie during winter there, basically, just because of where it sits on the mountaintop and everything. So they have left the Eyrie for the winter there. And Sansa is still with Baelish, kind of sort of pretending to be his daughter, right?
It's either a bastard daughter or a niece, something like that.
Yeah. And I think the plan is maybe marrying to Robin there. Robin Aaron, since he's still around. But
I think that was the
Sounds
original
fair.
plan before her aunt died, was that they were going to get married.
Yes, I think you're right, because Liza actually consented to that.
Yeah.
so again, this is a clear change from the books in the show here of what's going on here. But now I will stop asking my own questions and throw it over to somebody else here. So Amanda, you want to go first?
Yes. I gotta find my notes. So, cutting back to the wall, nice cold, freezing wall. Jon Snow's been made Lord Commander. He appoints Lord Janos command of Greyguard. This doesn't go over so well, and the showdown we all saw coming ends poorly for Janos Slynt. Oh no, how horrible! Do you guys think that like Jon Snow knew when he set this up that Janos was gonna he's going to turn me down? I'm gonna have to do this now to get this out of the way, or do you think he was throwing it out there as a genuine like, hey, here's an olive branch?
He assumed he was going to take it because he's been humiliated publicly. It's known that like he literally hid in the battle against the wildlings and he soiled himself. Like, so this isn't an honorable position. So I had a follow-up question, but I'll go to everyone else's response to this one. So Stephen?
That's Nick next.
I can't see Nick. Sorry.
A puddle of his own making was the phrase that the amazing Samuel Tarley said about Janos. I think it was an olive branch. I think maybe not an olive branch in the sense of making peace, but just Jon is smart enough, even though he knows nothing, to know that he needs to break up this team of people against him. And so the first thing he wanted to do, he can't send Sir Alistair away because Sir Alistair is brave and does know how to fight, and he will need him in the battle against the Walkers. But I think just sending Janos Slynt somewhere else to get him out of his hair, I think is something that he was hoping he'd do. There's a follow-up scene there when they're taking Janos screaming outside, saying, "I will not go quietly, boy. I will not go quietly." Where you see Jon kind of sipping his drink, sitting at the table all by himself, contemplating. And to me, that was a total face of, all right, I got to do this thing. Otherwise, they're going to think that I'm not strong enough to listen to what they're doing or to do my job that I'm supposed to do if somebody talks back to me. So I think that, yeah, he wasn't really intending to. But then when Janos says what he says and defies him, he has to take his head. And that's where he's left with no choice but to do it. So he kind of drinks his last and screws his courage to the sticking place and goes outside and does what he has to do.
I actually wanted to talk about kind of that as well. To answer Amanda's question, I think this might have been Jon's team of rivals moment, if anyone's going to get that book reference there. But
Good book.
Thank you.
His what rival?
Team of rival moment.
Team of rival.
Great book. It's a biography basically of the Civil War, leadership. Go look it up. Anyways, what he's trying to do is he's trying to take his biggest enemies and put them into his administration and make him into a more popular leader, because I think he realizes he's not liked throughout all the quarters. And then I also agree with what Nick said. although he's giving them all these fairly prestigious positions, he also wants to break them up. They are currently a cabal against him. So moving them to places where can't talk to each other, that's a good thing. It breaks them apart. Hopefully they get consolidated in a new position. They start to at least accept being under Jon Snow's thumb. And obviously Slint's having none of it because Slint's an idiot, and I am not sad to see Slint go. That being said, I am not sure that was a wise move on Jon's part to just execute him for disobeying orders. I mean, throw him in the dungeon or something to that extent. And what I was going to bring up when I got called on almost was one of the things that Jon actually looks at after he executes Slint, who's, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I'm always afraid. Oh, we're all afraid. Get over yourself. And then, kills Slint, looks up, and there's Stannis, and Stannis just nods his approval. And I don't think there's a more damning thing in this world than Stannis' approval. Like, that means you did something wrong.
The hero of the revolution wants his approval. Why don't you?
But I also wanted to bring up that. I think this was just, it started off as a good idea. Slint disobeyed him. Slint should have been thrown in the prison, and it ends up, I don't think, in a good way at all. I think it ends up in a very bad spot, and I want to hear everyone else's thoughts on that too.
I'll let Tyler answer Amanda's question before I raise another question. Did Tyler answer the question?
Oh yeah, he can go.
So
He means is that Gary's like, why don't you throw in that before I decide to really throw some chaos into this?
That's true.
Chaos grenade.
Original question there of just.
The original question was, do you think that putting Jaina Slint on the team there was a good idea, or was Jon being politic about it, or did he know that Jaina Slint was going to say no and he's trying to get rid of him?
Yeah, was it like an olive branch, or was it actually genuine?
I think it was like an olive branch there, basically, kind of like, as you guys have alluded, to just try and break up the cabal against him, as Steven so eloquently put it there, too. And I will say, too, to cut in line of everybody else here, then, he had to take Jaina Slint's head because of the way he reacted and said no to Jon there. And basically, if Jon basically, like, this goes into, justice and everything like that, of when is too much justice, or whatever, as we talk about with Danny there, of like, from the perspective here, in order for Jon to continue to show strong leadership there, he has to take care of dissenters in the ranks there. And if a rank and file member is actively revolting against him there, what else is he going to do? It's basically been put to the test that this guy can't be trusted to follow orders here, and a Night's Watch membership is for life, so your life is now done. That was all I was going to kind of say. But Gary,
I guess a spin-off question is like, and it's kind of been half answered by a couple of people, is did Jon have a reason to give Jaina Slint that specific role? And my thoughts were that, like, okay, so he's been, as he said, the leader of the City Watch, so he has moderate leadership ability, but he's also kind of a wuss. So I feel like that's kind of putting him in a lower to middle management position, not near you. Like, hey, you're going to take over this castle. Is it a great castle? No, but we need it done, and you know how to manage people. Let's just send you off. So I guess, do you guys feel like there was a reason that he was, if it wasn't, if he did expect him to take it, like, why would he put him in that position other than just getting him the fuck out? Nick?
I think, just getting him out is the main reason. He does know that he did command the City Watch, and so knowing that he can have some leadership ability, and the way he said it too kind of lends itself to that. Like, he just said, Janice, I'm giving you command of each watch. He's giving him command of a castle, right? I mean, even if it's a ruin and it's in sad repair and it needs a lot, he could have given him the job to go fix the latrine that he gave to the ginger instead, right? Like, there's worse jobs out there. It's like I said earlier, I think it's just trying to get him to go away. Similar to, like, even with Sir Alistair, he gave Sir Alistair the position of lead ranger, another position that's a prominent, respectful role, but the rangers leave. they all go north of the wall and go ranging. So it's also another thing to help get him out of the castle. Yeah, I think it's just the trend is he's trying to break up this group of people who dislike him and get them to just, get out of his hair is what he's looking at doing. Steven, I'll throw it back to you. Got a couple different questions going on.
Yeah, there are. I think that's actually a good point about the ranger. I mean, if you want to get someone out of the government in the United States, you appoint them as ambassador to a different country because that gets them out of there. That's actually a real thing. But I don't agree with if Janos Slynt was insubordinate, he could have been thrown in the dungeon, and he could be thrown in the dungeon for an indefinite amount of time. 1 second. Excuse me.
Bless you.
While Steven is sneezing, I just want to throw out a quick thing at him here. Steven, you keep on saying they could have been thrown in the dungeon. You're the history nerd here. Tell me, would somebody back then, if someone's going to defy you right out of the gate like that, would they throw you in the dungeon? Castle Black doesn't have dungeons.
Castle Black not have dungeons?
No. It's not a castle. They call it a castle as a courtesy. It's not a castle. It's literally celebrated as the fact that it does not have. It cannot be held from the south.
So here was my thought, basically, where I was going to get to. Sorry for the sneezing. Was that Jesus. You still need bodies to do work, and you could throw them basically in a chain gang if you want. But I don't see necessarily how executing him helps at all. I only see that antagonizing the people that Jon was just trying to get sort of on his side by offering them an olive branch. He's offering that faction 2 olive branches there with 2 prominent positions. One of them rejects the position, and he immediately executes him. That's not... I don't think that shows any quality of leadership. I don't think that... But, yeah.
The boys club. What the fuck do you expect?
I think that it shows a strong leader is what Jon's going for. It exposes Janos for who he is, where he says he's actually afraid and terrified. Again, yes, there might be some way to rehabilitate these people, but again, they're basically rapists, thieves, smugglers, terrible people. And so it's not like, oh, this person may change their ways just because they're in a dungeon or they're, remanded to remedial labor and freezing. And he knows Janos too. Maybe it's not that everybody gets executed, but he knows Janos. And it wasn't immediate either. Like, Jon didn't say, I'm going to cut off your head if you don't agree with me. He does say, are you refusing my order? Like, pointedly to Janos. And gives him a chance to back down and say, you're talking to your Lord Commander. And Janos says, you can take your order and shove it up your, whatever, your bastard ass. And it's like, all right, Ollie, go grab my sword. And it's like, this is what's going to happen. So I don't think he's out of line. I think given the situation, the period, historical in a fantasy setting that they're trying to portray, I think absolutely Jon has every right for someone who's insubordinate to take his head in that situation. It's justifying because we know that Janos Slynt is a very antagonistic character. But in the rank and file situation that we've seen from Castle Black, yeah. And
Did you also catch the look on Sir Alistair Thorne's face when he sees Janos Slynt doing this? Like, you can tell Sir Alistair's like, oh no, like he knows what's going to happen here.
Yes.
And I feel like most of them are like the Castle Black has the rules. If you're not going to obey, you will be to death. Like, you can see Sir Alistair is like, he knows what's going to happen, and he can't do anything to stop it.
I'm going to jump in really quick, Gary. He allows it to happen. He stands up in front of him, and it seems like he's going to stand up to Jon grabbing him, or I think it's Gren is the last guy, because Pip is dead and Gren is dead. So Ed, thank you, Dolores Ed, is the last guy who's there, who's walks over with them. He's like, grab him. And it looks like Alistair's going to be in his way, and he steps to the side and allows him to grab. Janos kind of, like, his smile fades when you realize Alistair steps to the side. So, yeah, he knows what's going to happen, and he knows that's not a battle he can win against 30 of the other Brothers of the Night's Watch. So, yeah.
I'm jumping in real quick here too, Gary. I don't think it's a battle he wants to win or necessarily needs to win. I think he sees that Slynt is a liability at this point.
Yeah, he's got himself that far in his own, in a puddle of his own making.
Tyler, do you want to jump in before Gary too?
I'll let
Everyone
Gary go.
else is
Tyler, what are your thoughts on this conversation?
Okay, I think is that he really had a choice because I think Alistair's kind of weighing it, and in his mind he's like, if Alistair was the Lord Commander and somebody pulled this shit on him, they'd be dead too. Like Alistair's just being like, if you did this to me, like that's what needs to be done. Like I don't think Sir Alistair would take that shit either. Like, but also Stephen was mentioning like, oh well, that was a little harsh. Like you could put him in the dungeons, but I just don't know where you put him because you've already given him the opportunity to be like in charge of a castle, and he said, "Fuck that." Okay, so now where do you put him? Do you send him out as like a backup ranger? Do you still send him into that castle, but
I don't know if
not
I'd trust him.
leader? Like, do you leave him in like he's someone who can't be trusted? Like you can't demote him. Like there's no demoting him. It's either like you get better roles, you get more honor, or like maybe you make him the ambassador to the wildlings. That's my vote.
Oh
If
yes,
you
he'd be an
alive,
excellent.
make him the ambassador to the wildlings.
I love it.
It might have been biased in John's favor here, just because I was like, oh, he's trying an olive branch, but you know what? Oh no, farewell, Janice. But Stephen, I do owe you an apology. I'm pretty sure I do remember now that Castle Black had ice cells, like in the bottom of the base of the wall.
I thought they had something.
It wasn't a dungeon, but I apologize. You're right. Pretty sure there was ice cells. But oh no, it's too bad. I guess Janice is gone.
Yeah.
The world mourns his loss. Anyways.
We shall never see his like again.
Thankfully.
And nobody says his watch has ended now, so
It's true. Interesting name for him, since Janus was the Roman god that has two faces. Also.
Ooh.
History.
That'd be Janice, not Janos.
Close enough.
On that
I'm
topic,
sorry.
Go to Amanda's next topic.
I'm good. Next.
Go ahead, Nick.
Dang it. I'm trying to think of my question again. My question is, I'll probably go back over to Arya. We'll jump across the sea to Essos and take a look at Arya over at the Castle Black.
House of Black and
The
White.
House of Black and White. House of Black and White. Thank you. She's just like sweeping the floors, doing her own thing, not really sure what she needs to do here. And there's people who are just like hanging out, right? I mean, just random poppers or people who are there at the House of Black and White who are just sipping that Kool-Aid, so it were, and passing out, and then getting carried off into the back room. Arya finally gets a peek behind the door when they leave the door open, and the man with no name, Jaqen H'ghar, is who he says he is, but he says a man is no one, allows her to follow, and the other little waif, I don't think we've heard her name, and a waif is just a little kid. Oh, what's this episode?
That's this episode, Gary.
No, anyway, never mind.
Allows her to go back in the back room. And they're cleaning the body, and Arya says, what do we do with them after we clean them? What do you think happens after we clean them? I'm just kind of curious. Do you think that there's... Well, I mean, shot in the dark. I don't know.
How many signs do you have?
He's got a lot of signs.
4 in front of me, and they're all double-sided.
But my question is legit, though, because I'm curious. Are they cleaning... Okay, here, better question. I'll rephrase then, if there's a concern here. Where do you think these people are coming from? Like, do you think that they're just the poor people off the street? Or does the House in Black and White have a reputation of this is a place of salvation, something religious, clearly, because they said that the many-faced God lives there? Or is this something where people who have nothing better to do, like that's their way of getting out, right? Or they see it as something destitute people go to? What's the thought there, Stephen?
I'm sure that there are. I bet it would be contracts of some kind. You owe your face to
Ooh.
the Temple of Black and White after if you can't pay or something to that extent. It's like owing your soul to the devil, right? That's what would strike me as similar. Also, if maybe there's some sort of like I don't want to say charity because it's not wouldn't be charity, but
It's a write-off.
yeah, some sort of religious devotion, like you said, to where people praise the many-faced God and go in and they give themselves to the many-faced God as people in religions do give themselves to God
Sure.
uh, in whatever way you are looking at that. I'm not going to go too far into that, but um, I'm sure it's religious devotion.
I like that. You mentioned contractual. I'm interested about that as well. Anna, what do you think?
I have a little more information from the books, though not a lot.
Yeah,
But I
books.
actually like that the books were like they were also it was very mysterious, and while being like really confused and a little creeped out by it, I was still fascinated by it. In the books it makes a teensy bit more explanation where he tells Arya about like these people came in and like basically getting like the House of Black and White acts like they're being like the good guy vigilantes here going after people that wronged these people coming into the it seems like they're giving their lives in return. I'm unclear about that. It's a very drastic price to pay for your final
Saying, like,
revenge.
Your
Interesting.
wife needs somebody murdered, and the husband sacrifices himself, and that's the payment.
I think one of the examples was like a wife they had bought insurance. Basically, her husband was a sailor. He went off. He died. So they're supposed to pay out to the family, and the guy refused. He cheated them, and so he was cheating all these people. And so the wife came in and like gave herself, her life, her face, and then House of Black and White took out that guy.
Interesting.
Interesting.
That's kind of a contractual thing. I'm on board with that.
Nick's cool with it.
Yeah.
Nick's cool.
They're making a weird noise. Enough said.
I guess I had another question on the many-faced god, and that was, do you guys get the sense that Arya is completely, like, much like the viewers, very unaware of this religion? Like, in Westeros, she obviously knows the gods of the North. She knows the gods of the Seven. She's been introduced to the Lord of Light, and she probably knows about the fisherman octopus god, that the drowned god. Is it just sort of assumed that like they have no understanding of this faceless god because it's literally like halfway across the world? And so like I don't know, I just was, as I was watching, I was questioning if somebody should have told her something about this religion at some point, or just it's just a mystery. Amanda?
I think you're right, honestly. Like the girl even says, the wife even says it in the show. She's like, "You walked in here with a coin you did not earn, whose value you did not appreciate." Like I think Arya, granted, she's supposed to be like what, like 10 here or something, or even younger, even especially if you go by the books. But yeah, no, I don't think she knows anything about it. Though I do like your description of like the octopus god.
I can't remember. I don't know if I've ever seen an image of the drowned god. I just think of the what it
Cthulhu.
the sea god, the house of the sea people that one guy's from, who doesn't have a
Ironborn?
wiener anymore.
Greyjoy?
Greyjoy, yes. What house the what religion the Greyjoys?
Yeah, the drowned god. You
The
had it
drowned
right.
god.
Tyler had it right.
Well, I didn't know if there's ever any symbolism to him in the show with statues or anything like that.
Don't believe so.
Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole.
But I kind of had the same thought about the her lack of understanding about it, because yeah, just like the waif girl comes in and kind of harasses her and starts whacking at her, whacking at Arya. Then Jack and Hagar comes in and says the same thing too. She's wearing Arya Stark's clothes, and a girl's wearing Arya Stark's sword. And how did someone come to own so many of Arya Stark's things if a girl is no one? And yeah, the obvious thought is that you can't have these things, and then she tries to understand it, but it's difficult for her. We see that she stands outside on the pier and tosses all her stuff into the water to get rid of it. But when she comes to her sword, it's so personal to her and what that journey has meant to her, because we've seen her practice with that sword and stab the people off her list with that sword and all this stuff, that she is still very much Arya Stark at this point in the story. There's nothing that says she's ready to move on to the next step. So yeah, there's something that has to change. I think we talked in a previous podcast, not to go back and be too delve into too much history here, but we talked about like the hero's journey of like you come to a point where something has to change, or you grow, or the character doesn't evolve. And I think that this is the point in the story for Arya where she has to become somebody else or continue to be who she is right now. Who she is right now is lost on another continent 1,000 miles from home. Tyler.
I'd say she's probably also searching for something that she doesn't know she wants, though, which is why she made the journey over there.
Right.
But I was going to kind of touch on, too, just a little bit between, like, it seems like there's a bond somewhat between Jaqen and the girl formerly known as Arya there, because he constantly happens to show up sometimes to basically talk to her further about what's going on here, and also just happens to show up at the right time to kind of save Arya from taking a bunch of more beatings from the waif there. So I'm just kind of curious if anyone else and his like conversation with her always is more like I want to say mentorly, but not quite there or whatever. But I was just kind of curious if anyone else picks up on that too. But Gary?
A little bit. That I think it's just, I assume that everyone has to be kind of introduced into this cult of no personness. So I wonder if he's just sort of the guide to get her from like being a person who has interpersonal connections and to try to move her to somebody with no interpersonal connections, someone who could be anybody. So yeah, that was to answer your question. My going up Nick's point about how she throws all of her things away, and I think it's interesting because she can throw away her clothes and she doesn't dress like Arya Stark. She can throw away the money because she's lost value in that, or she released that from her soul, but she couldn't get lower of the sword. But is there interesting symbolism that she literally buries the sword? She buries that one piece of herself, but she's willing to give away everything else about her and who she is. She can be anyone, but she still just wants to bury that little bit of like this gift down a little bit, because in the next scene she like kind of reappears in the temple, like very much like someone who's reinvigorated of trying to be no one, but she just sort of buried that little thing, and ultimately maybe she never ever digs it up, or maybe she just visits every once in a while and does naughty things with it. I don't know, but yeah. Tyler's shaking his head. I got at least one distressful eye roll.
I don't know what the heck does naughty things with the sword.
Okay. Anyway, that's all I had. Does anyone else want to answer Tyler's question about I've already forgotten?
It was just about the bond between Jaqen and Arya.
Jaqen and Arya.
All right. Nick, did you have any more questions? All right, Steven, your turn.
Do you have anything, Nick?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I will be honest that Amanda and Tyler took my two things that I wanted to talk about, so I don't actually have anything. And that's why I went so long, by the way, on Amanda's point, because that was my point too.
I got there first. What about your favorite little buddy there, Pod for King?
Yeah, he's learning how to do swords. I mean, it's not really like game changing, but he's learning how to do swords.
I think there was some interesting going on the pod conversation. I just completely skipped it. There was some interesting sort of background.
It's so interesting you skipped it.
Character building because I think they try to set up Pod's backstory about before you see him on screen, and they also set up Brienne's backstory before you see her on screen, and to sort of explain their motivation that Brienne is just like explains why she loved Renly so much, because Renly was a nice guy when he didn't need to be, and how Pod was just happy not to be executed. So, Nick?
I think that it's showing a deepening of that relationship as well, because Brienne apologizes in that interchange too, right? She's like kind of snippy because she still just kind of came off the battle with the Hound. That, you know, she didn't win, she probably didn't lose because the Hound was in worse shape than she was. But I think that conversation starts with Pod questioning why she's still kind of following after Sansa, even though Sansa didn't want her help and Arya didn't want her help. But she's still doing her job. And she's like, well, I was charged with an oath by Lady Catelyn. She's like, well, Lady Catelyn's dead, isn't she? And she snaps at him again. But then she realizes, I'm sorry I'm always running you down, and she apologizes to him. And that's something that Brienne probably never would have done when she first got to know Pod. And so, however you want to look at it, Pod either wearing her down or Brienne opening up to him more. Yeah, they do have that exchange where they talk about their backstories a little bit. And I think that more so than we understanding those characters as an audience, it's them understanding each other too, since they're kind of charged with taking care of each other, whether they want to admit it or not. It does show that there's more of a bond there than there probably was a few days ago. So I thought that was cool.
Yep.
Is everybody else done? So I get to make my last points
You
for the
get to
episode.
paint your points there, Gary.
Okay. I only have like 1 or 2 more points left. And that was, I made note on a rewatch. Ramsay Bolton says to Littlefinger, like, I'll never hurt her. You have my word. And that, like, on a rewatch really, really sticks, because you realize he's kind of done some sketchy shit in the past. And without spoiling anything, he does some sketchy shit in the future. So that was definitely sticks on a rewatch. Also, on the rewatch, I caught how Ramsay Bolton sort of the manner in which he presents himself in both of these episodes is very much of a humble young lord. Like, if you didn't see anything before this, if you gave this episode to somebody brand new, you would assume he's similar to a Robb Stark or one of the younger Stark sons that, like, very much just like wants to be a knight when he grows up. Like, that's, if you look at the actor on screen, like, that's how he portrays himself. Like, obviously he's full of shit, but it's just interesting on a rewatch to see how he presents himself in front of Peter Baelish and Sansa.
And I think that's
Steven?
very. It goes to show just how much of a chameleon character he is, because I mean, we even kind of saw that while he was torturing Reek at this point. He became whatever he needed to become. Was he a savior? He was a savior. Was he a torturer? He was a torturer. Was he some like weird diplomat who was going to double cross everyone he came across? He was a weird diplomat that was going to double cross everyone. He is the perfect chameleon, and he has no conscience. He is the perfect monster.
There is one point I wanted to touch on before we end this conversation on this episode here, was Cersei's conversation in the introduction of the High Sparrow, which sets off a lot of stuff happens basically because
it's a small arc. Small arc.
Dorne is a small arc, but that's a whole other problem there. The quote that kind of comes out there that's something to remember for going forward is Cersei's line of, the faith and the crown are 2 pillars that hold up this world here, that she's talking to the High Sparrow about. She is trying to basically bring the High Sparrow under her side, basically as another pawn on her chessboard. Not quite, it seems like, grasping that the High Sparrow is not really somebody who can be bought or paid off or bribed or anything like that. He is truly this holy person, And it all kind of like their introduction starts with them attacking the current High Septum there in Baelish's brothel there, which is it's them weeding out the corrupt, faith there, trying to insert their own version of the clean, pure religion there that they believe they're following there. So, Gary, what'd you make on that?
I on the rewatch, I actually caught that when she brings the sparrow into her chambers, she explains like, oh well, there's corrupt people in King's Landing, like, and I need to bring justice to the rich. And on a rewatch, you realize she got more than what she handled, and it comes back to her at some point. Not trying to spoil anything, but on a rewatch, if you know shit's going down, it's definitely noticeable. Yeah, I know, Nick. I spoil everything.
Yell at me holding up a sign, and you're the one talking about what's going to happen in future episodes.
Who's got one finger up? Nick's got two. We'll start with Nick, I guess.
I had one. I was after you. Yeah, nothing bad ever happens historically when people use the faith as a political pawn or tool, right? That always ends well for everybody. Yeah, I think that she's we talked about, earlier in this episode how Marjorie is kind of throwing, the queen's position in her own face. And I think that absolutely this is Cersei's using the High Septon to get faith on her side, because she sees that they do have a power and they do have an ability to rout out perceived evils with what they did to the previous High Septon. She goes ready to talk to the High Sparrow, and the High Sparrow is talking about, well, whatever happened to the last High Septon, hopefully I don't, receive his same fate or get praised or whatever. And she says, no, he's in the red cells. It's like, oh, okay, like maybe she's different than the rest of the corrupt monarchy. We find out she's probably not. But she sees an opening then that this person is more pious, this person is more perceived holy, and therefore is more willing to do justice on behalf of, like you said, Tyler, very eloquently, the crown's behalf as well as the faith's behalf. And I think that gives her an edge, because she does see a lot of people who are probably not along the line of what is traditionally accepted in this fantasy world. And so, she's willing to rout out people who are promiscuous or people who are doing things that are perceived taboo. Again, it's a fantasy world, but the setting draws from a lot of real world expectations and traditional standards. So I think that, yeah, she can really get Marjorie where it hurts, which is her family, which we see in this episode. Amanda.
I really gotta wonder what Cersei's endgame is in this one, because the High Sparrow seems like a very devout, very pious guy, but he literally was condoning the actions of these guys to go in and take down literally like the High Septon. And so that already shows a willingness to use violence and to go in there and take down somebody without a thought. What does she think she is? And she literally also doesn't like when she wants her way, she also goes underhand and corrupt ways. So I don't know how she doesn't think this could backfire on her. I had another thought, I'm just blanking on it. Go on to Gary, I'll think of it.
I guess on a rewatch, just realizing that, like, I don't know if the people in the brothel, other than the first guy, the High Septum, if they had titles or names, but it just seems like the brothel master was like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, this is Peter Baelish's brothel. Like, this is like a very important lord. Why are you guys effing with me? And just basically, I think their goal is just to like destroy the brothel and kill everyone in it for being sinners. They also cut open all the wine and ale and like they're just wasting all that booze, and it just makes you sad. But anyway, Steven?
I wanted to go on to what Amanda was talking about with Cersei and why was she doing this? What's her plan? And I honestly think I don't think this is out of character at all for her. I think this is very much in Cersei's character. She thinks she's so much smarter than she is, and she thinks she is so much more clever than she is. And that's what Tywin kept telling her. You think you're so much smarter, and you're not. You're not this intelligent. You're not this clever. You just happen to be. A giant among pygmies, is what she is, and she's trying to play a game that she thinks that she can win because she's always won it, and she's never dealt with this kind of person. Amanda.
I remembered my thought. I do think it's a very dangerous hot weapon to use for one single goal. It seems like it's her plan is against Marjorie. And I'm like, that's a pretty hot weapon to do for something, for just one little thing, when it's a little almost disappointing to me, because I feel like in the first season, the first couple seasons, like she was a little more subtle and clever than that. Like, we didn't see things coming. We didn't see her outmaneuvering Ned Stark. We didn't see any of that. This just, it seems more clumsy to me, but maybe it normally is. Maybe she's just been immensely lucky till now. I don't know. Nick?
I like the thought on being immensely lucky. Yeah, I don't think that she's got the foresight here to really understand what she's doing. She's meddling with powers beyond her control and definitely taking a sledgehammer response to something that's very small. I actually jumped in because, yeah, Stephen, you took the words right out of my mouth. Tywin has that comment. You think you're so much smarter than everyone else. You know, you think you're terribly clever. And she does. She thinks, haha, I'm going to use the Faith Militant to go rout out all these people and everything will be perfectly fine. Haha, I win. Without even realizing what she's doing by weaponizing the Faith Militant. Again, we don't have to go into the book here, but the history of the realms, Tyler's been reading as well, the Faith Militant were a huge problem against the ruling dynasty in the early years of the Targaryens, because they had so much unwielding power that they just destroyed a whole bunch of the local lands around the crown. And that's why they were originally disbanded. So when she says she's going to rearm them or reinstigate the Faith Militant, you know, that's two words that don't ever go well together in history, fictional or not, are faith and militancy. So that's, yeah.
She totally didn't read her history.
Well, I was going to say,
Exactly.
if only there was a person there who had read the histories and was intimately familiar with the repercussions of what thing happens in the history.
Right, right. Like you said, Amanda, it absolutely. She's just lucky. Her position has allowed her to be very sheltered and privileged. So she feels I am wrong because I live in my golden tower and I don't get my way today, without really understanding what's going on around her, and in the process has given so much of her power to something far worse than what she's trying to control in Marjorie. So yeah, that's it's not going to end well. I don't foresee it ending well. Even if I didn't know, I do, what's going to happen. I think I remember in this part in the show, we were just watching that thinking, this is not going to end well. Tyler.
Yeah, so you guys basically hit all the points I was going to cover there. The part about the history of the Faith Militant before with the Targaryen dynasty did not really end well for quite a while there for both sides. And then
Right.
Cersei not necessarily being lucky. I think, well, I guess it is lucky, but she's had people around her to help. Like, I think Ned's greatest downfall was trusting Littlefinger there. And obviously Littlefinger played that against Ned, working with Cersei for his own benefit there. But yeah, it's Cersei's definitely taking way too narrow of a focus on her perceived problem against Marjorie there, and basically, like Nick said, taking a sledgehammer at a problem that would maybe require a smaller hammer or a light tap. Yeah, that kind of sums up this episode here. On to episode 4, Sons of the Harpy. My first point to talk about, from IMDb. Jorah Mormont sets sail alongside his prisoner Tyrion. Cersei makes a move against the Tyrells. Jaime and Bronn sneak into Dorne. Ilaria and the Sand Snakes make their plan. Melisandre tempts Jon. The Harpies attack. First point to point out here, and this is maybe a sign here that the writers are kind of taking liberties with the source material. Dorne is shown in the opening, not the country Dorne. A city titled Dorne is shown in the opening, which is not true. There, Dorne is a country.
Really?
Yep. If you go
I
back
didn't
and watch
catch
that introduction there, I think it's actually the Water Gardens. There basically is really where they're at,
Sunspear.
Sunspear, maybe that too, but it's they call it Dorne on the map there. They don't call it Sunspear. They don't call it the Water Gardens. It's called Dorne. So it's like
Interesting.
like I caught that and I had to stop and rewind the opening. So like, did I see that?
I didn't
correctly?
catch that. That's clever. Or that's
Yeah, good
not clever,
catch.
but that's a good catch.
I did not notice that. Good catch.
But come on, it's not like they would realm or wrap everything into one, one culture into one city. That would be
Yeah, they definitely didn't generalize an entire nation into one specific
no.
city.
Misappropriation.
So, touching on our last conversation we just had there about Cersei arming the Faith Militant, she ends up dropping one hell of a bomb there, basically a subtle bomb there, to the High Sparrow there, about a certain member of the Tyrell family there who should be brought to justice against the gods there. And we see that eventually the Faith Militant there goes out and arrests, for lack of a better word, Loras Tyrell there. So I'm kind of curious here, like we've been touching on this, like, did Cersei outright say, hey, you need to go, this guy is, a known sword swallower, as they like to say, pillow biter? Or did she kind of drop enough hints that the High Sparrow did a little bit of investigating and went, yep, he's somebody we need to take care of? Steven.
Sorry, I think maybe Nick had before.
That's fine. I was just going to say yes. I think she absolutely just name dropped him.
I'm not so sure. I think she cleverly implied that. And I don't think the Red Keep ISIS, as I refer to them, really needed that much prodding to be able to go after anyone. I think that they were looking for things to kill. And this was actually be one of my points as well, is that this is a religious fanatic cult, like we just hit on a little bit, and they are looking just to show blood. They are looking to kill anyone who doesn't even mildly believe what they believe. And if anyone is familiar with the history of ISIS, they are the Red Keep ISIS. They're not good people.
All right. Checking over my points here real quickly and which one I wanted to talk about next. Probably just going to move into the next one here. I wrote it down as Tommen's ineptitude is starting to show there, because Marjorie has charged him.
Starting to show.
Well, it's really starting to kind of show through now when he actually has to try and assert his authority as king there, because Marjorie has said, you need to go get my brother out of prison here. Basically, it's your mother's doing. And he doesn't want to believe that his mother did this, although we all know his mother did this, even though she technically didn't do it there. It was the Faith Militants doing there. So is this like it's kind of like an interesting question to ask here. Like, is this just kind of due to Tommen's young age, not having ever really been involved in politics, some combination of all the above here, of like his meekness and not really wanting to do anything there, of not really wanting to assert authority there?
I think you're right. All of the above. I think that he's young. I think he was never groomed for the position, so he has never had to be in charge and command. And I think he is just generally meek. He is not a person to go ahead and take charge. And one of the scenes that we see here is how he goes up to the what is the palace? Or not the palace, the religious place called there.
Sept of Baelor?
Yeah, the Sept of Baelor. And he, the king, is denied entrance because the High Sparrow is praying. I have no idea what was going through his mind at that point. But I honestly think it might have been better for him to just have ordered his Kingsguard to slaughter everyone in that entire, like, don't get me wrong, it wouldn't have been like a moral decision, but for showing his kingly power and for showing who is in charge, who holds the monopoly on violence in that state, that is what he needed to do. He needed to somehow put them down, whether it be arresting or killing.
So, Stephen, that's a little bit opposite of what you just thought Jon Snow should do. But
Okay, but because I don't think none of them would have gone quietly. I think you could have put Janos Slynt in a cell and he would have been just happy. I don't think
you
any
just
of
said
these
to
guys would have gone to a
slaughter
cell.
all of them.
Yes, because they would not go
Slaughter
quietly.
religious people.
You can't
Slaughter
arrest-
religious people.
You can't arrest a member of ISIS. They're going to try to kill them.
What are they doing? Praying. Nope, kill them.
Oh yeah, that's exactly how it's going to work.
I mean, your point is well taken, though. Like, I have to go back to wonder, what is Cersei's game here? Like, she's not thinking this through. She literally is diminishing the authority of her own son in public in front of these people. And she is ruling for her son. This is only going to diminish her own power here. That's good. On to Nick.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing about what you're saying, Stephen, there. That, yeah, I think if this situation, I mean, you win the game, you play the Game of Thrones or you die, right? I mean, if you want to try and keep the strength and show that you're someone not to be trifled with, yeah, absolutely, you slaughter those people. But the king, and he is not a powerful person. Tommen wouldn't know what to do if he put a sword in his hand.
No.
Him walking right up to all those people and being between his Kingsguard and those people, he's going to be the first lamb slaughtered. He should have stayed hidden, not even gotten out of the castle, stayed in the Red Keep, and had those guards go there and do his king's justice. The fact that he was there, yeah, shows his, presence, but again, that's the difference there between the Crown and the Faith Militant, is they would have slaughtered the king and not cared about it because they're answering to a higher power, quote unquote. So I think all the people, there were people down the corridor in the far background of that shot too, who were shouting down with the king and agreeing with the Faith Militant too. So even though it was just the people on the steps, there's still a mob of people back there that if the king had slaughtered those people, or at least the people in his way, there's people who would have seen that and seen the king act out of turn, even though we would have known why he was doing it. He showed, just like what we said, he showed up to a church. Well, what are they doing? They're praying inside. Okay, well, I just killed them all, and now I'm going to go in and yell at the High Septon. That does not bode well for PR. So that there's a lot there. I don't know what you do in that situation. I think that it would have needed to be something dealt in a totally different way, but that speaks to Tommen's ineptitude. He's just bouncing between his mom, the High Septon, and his wife. There's no way he's going to win those conversations with not knowing what to do. So, yeah. Tyler, I think is up next.
So I was going to touch on this. Number one, I don't think the Faith Militant would have outright killed the king, but I think the bigger point, and it was something I don't think you quite touched on in your argument there, Stephen, was the fact that he couldn't slaughter the Faith Militant outright there with him being there because there was the entire mob behind him who started shouting stuff at him like, you're a bastard, you're unworthy or something like that, you don't belong there. So as Nick was kind of alluding to there, if he goes about doing that with his Kingsguard and his Lannister soldiers behind them there, it incites a mob, which, as we saw with what happened when Joffrey incited a mob there, people die. The big thing is not rousing the common folk there, because there are more common people than there are knights and Kingsguard and everything like that. So keeping the mob somewhat placated in your quest to try and speak to the High Sparrow, I mean, it's maybe the smarter thing he probably did of okay, I mean, it doesn't show him in a great light of backing away from his rule being challenged, but also, too, it doesn't incite a mob there of the people to come out after him and storm the Red Keep. Gary?
I was going to say, can he make an appointment or set up summon him?
I don't think there's a Microsoft Office calendar there to schedule
Teams
appointments.
message.
It was a Teams meeting, all right?
The mob, hey, just tell him when he gets out he's been summoned. If I have to come back here again, I'm going to come back with a bigger force, and you guys are fucked. Or please let him know that I need to see him. The queen has summoned you to answer for crimes against, her family. You can't just, maybe it's just, as you said, the ineptitude of Tommen to be you bet, knowing his power that, I can summon you, and if you're not going to show up, you got similar to the Jon Snow, you've been warned, you've been summoned, obviously he's praying is like, I respect that he's praying, but please let him know that upon his completion, he has been summoned to answer for his crimes.
I think it goes to show the power dynamic, and I think that both you and Nick are right in that the power dynamic should have been that the power dynamic should have been the king summons you to the palace. You don't go to the king doesn't go to you. That shows that the king is subservient to you. You go to the king, and so he should have summoned the scepter. That is definitely but that also goes to kind of show the power dynamic in the city right now. What is the reality on the ground? And sure, the de jure might be that he's
pizzas?
The what?
They have DiGiorno pizzas?
Yes, they have DiGiorno pizza.
Okay.
By law, de jure, by law, the sept should have gone to him, but de facto, by fact, he has to go to the sept. And I think that, yeah, maybe if the sept's not going to come to you, you just, I think you do have to send in the military at that point. And yeah, you might risk inciting the mob, but be prepared. I don't think that anyone was prepared to incite the mob when what happened to Joffrey happened to Joffrey. I think if you're prepared against a mob, you can cut down a mob pretty quickly. That's as if you have spears, swords, shields, armor, and they have shirts.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a long fight.
I think that I don't know if the High Sparrow would have said, kill people if they come after me. I mean, he would know what it would mean like if you imprison the Queen's brother. I don't know if he has a title, but the Queen's brother. Of course, the Queen is going to come after him, or the King maybe might come after him. Like, I think the High Sparrow would be wise enough to know that would be a problem, that there's going to be some repercussion. And so that's why there's a bunch of guys standing out front of where he is in the High Sept, in the Sept of Baelor. And so I don't think he told his folks, kill them if it comes to it, but just kind of stand guard out there. And I think the Faith Militant was zealous enough, is probably the right word, that they would have if it came to blows. So it goes to show the difference between the previous administration with Joffrey and how violent he probably would have been in that situation. If he needed something taken care of, you're dead. Violently, ruthlessly, viciously. Whereas I think Tommen was probably just going to go and talk, probably beg, knowing Tommen, right? Can you please let my, new wife's brother go? Which is just something it just shows his ineptitude. So it's just interesting, the difference between the two people there in the different classes. I really think that if Tommen doesn't change his way, he's just going to end up falling flat on his face.
Do you have a you actually brought up something that I might kind of disagree with. You said that the High Sparrow doesn't necessarily agree or condone or tell the Sparrowites, or whatever they're called, the Faith Militia, to do what they are doing. I don't believe that at all. I think he is very, very aware of what they are doing, and this is kind of a, he's not telling them to storm the Capitol, but
I don't know. I kind of want to hold on to that point. I think he's aware of what they're doing. Absolutely aware. Like when they go in and they're attacking Littlefinger's brothel, and like Gary was saying, where they're murdering people and slashing the 7-pointed stars into people's foreheads. I think that he knows what they're doing is violent and ruthless, but I don't think he's outright implicitly saying so. I think he's telling them, go and bring the justice of the 7 to these people. Well, what does that mean? Make them see the light. That kind of stuff. I don't think he's telling them go and attack and brutally maim people. I don't see him doing it because he seems.
Is there a difference between? But that you're getting down to semantics. Is there a difference between what he's doing and telling him to go out and kill those people or brutalize them?
I think it is semantics. I think that there's not a difference, but in his mind, he's devout, he's pious. He doesn't want violence, but he wants to root out evil. But you have to do that root and stem in order to get rid of the corruption. So I think he's willing to let the ends justify the means, is what I'm saying. I don't know if there's a difference there. Us observers of this story, third party people, omniscient, that we see all of this. We know that that's not kosher and that's not cool. And we would see that there's no difference there. But I don't know if he does, the High Sparrow. I think in his mindset, letting his acolytes do something vicious and commit atrocity in the goal of furthering the Seven's justice is right.
All right. I think that was my question there. So we'll go with Steven. Start us off here with your questions for the episode.
All right, so I'm just going to do one question, and I am going to go with. I'll go with Bronn and Jaime landing in the City of Dorne and uh, storming the beaches, killing a couple, guard and patrol, going, yeah, we're basically all the way done now. We just got to get Marcella back. Will be great. And then it going to 3 really cool ladies, the Sand Snakes, and that kind of I believe it is your first introduction into who they are, and they are very angry, shall we say, and you start to understand that there is some complexities going on in Dorne where you have a faction ruling the city, quote unquote city, who wants peace, and they are going to probably hand over Marcella. And then you have a faction that wants war, and that's the Sand Snakes and their mother, and who else? I mean, whoever else they can bring together. You don't see too much complexity in that one city, but I just think I don't know. Was there any impressions of you guys when you saw them? They just looked really cool when you meet them for me, and that was I feel like they will be important in the future, and won't it all die on a ship for no reason?
I was going to say, point of clarification: the 3 Sand Snakes we meet are all Oberyn Martell's children, right? They're his daughters too.
I
So
think so. Yeah.
they have a vested interest in getting back at the Lannisters because, I'm sure that since Oberyn talked nonstop about the terror of the Lannisters and how they destroyed his sister, that they would all grow up knowing the Lannisters destroyed and murdered their aunt and now also their father too. So yeah, as vicious as they can be. I mean, one was torturing a guy, a sailor captain with scorpions, and the other one threw a spear through the guy's head. So they are clearly dangerous people. Yeah, my first impression was that they're not someone to be trifled with. And I forget the main woman's name who's like leading them, who's like the mother person.
Alaria?
Laria.
Alaria, thank you. I don't think that she is each of their mothers. I don't know, maybe she is. Yeah, okay, so just yeah. But she clearly wants blood for Oberyn's death. And so it's something that I think that they'll probably play a very interesting part. Clearly there would not be they're not happy to hear that Jaime is in Dorne. And so I think that it's something that's going to clash very viciously because it's on their terms. I think that Oberyn was a dangerous character being from Dorne in Westeros, which historically is two totally different countries, not this part of the same continent, just that. But now they're in Dorne on their terms, and so the Sand Snakes are definitely have the upper hand here compared to Jaime and Bronn at 3.5 hands. Gary.
I would say that on a rewatch, I think it was also the realization, and I think it's pointed out that not all of the daughters are the main lady's children, that maybe they have different mothers. And I think that's not real. Like, without the rewatch, it's like a throwaway line. Like, I think this might be the only time it's explained that she's not the mother of all of them. Also, I'm gonna throw a hot take in there. Forgettable fucking characters. Like, There are 3 daughters that have 3 different visual styles, so you don't forget that they're 3 different fucking people. Like, you could consolidate them all into 2 people. You would lose absolutely nothing in that conversation. Like,
Ouch.
there's the Spartan lady, there's the pretty daughter who, like, I'll be with you, Mom. And then there's the third daughter who I don't even know if she has an answer to the question of I'll be with you. Like,
She says, "and my axe," doesn't she?
Yeah, basically. She's the one with a whip.
yeah, one's got a whip, one's got a spear, and I don't know what the other girl was called. It's flowers or something?
Knife.
A knife.
Is a knife.
Forgettable characters. Like,
Wow.
I was
I mean-
actually going to ask if in the book these people even exist or if they're a consolidation of people. Like, because they just.
Do. They are called the Sand Snakes because they are Oberyn Martell's daughters. And he was the red viper of Dorne.
Okay.
And then Sand is the last name given to any illegitimate children born in Dorne, just like Snow is in the north. But yes, they
Mhm.
do exist in the books. Only one of them is Alaria's daughter. Oberyn thought it good to arm all his daughters. I believe his quote was something about, if you ever get no problem with a boy, basically like, don't come to me, I gave you the weapons to deal with that.
Does it ever in the show explain which one is her actual daughter? It's not
Yeah,
the one with the fucking spear, because that one said that my mother like was crying and my daddy gave me a spear and blah blah.
It's the one that she like hugs and kisses or something when they first arrive. Like the girl runs up to her and is like, Mama, or something.
You know, that's a pretty good indication.
I think I wouldn't say that they're forgettable, terrible characters. I wouldn't agree with Gary, but they are a smaller subset of what we've seen so far with all the other story arcs that are going on. But yeah, clearly it's a continuation of Oberyn's story, and what these characters' aims are in direct opposition to other characters we see in the show. So as antagonists, I think that they have a place in the story. Mostly because I just like arguing with Gary.
I'm not even going to call this a B plot to the story here. This is more like a C or below plot to the whole story. The whole Dorne subplot is, it's interesting of what they do. I mean, I don't remember much of it from the books, but it's interesting what the show does to this whole subplot here, basically.
Yeah, I just feel like they don't really give enough of them a backstory. I feel like even a flashback of Oberyn, I feel like we're going to introduce these people well, these girls well. You do a flashback of Oberyn alive, like in that situation where he talks to the daughter about and arming themselves. That would have been a good fucking scene. That would have gave some, like, these people some depth as a character rather than just like, let's tell a fucking story. Let's 4 of us stand around a fucking tent in the middle of the desert and tell a story about.
Well,
our
this is.
daddy.
I will say this is a singular and a standalone moment in the show in terms of they give this its own moment. So we're talking about it being a C plot, and it is something that the show is obviously trying to tee up to be more than a C plot. Is this a symptom of it being the 5th season, of them not having enough material to go off of, and of them reducing an entire country to a single city?
I would have to say yes, because of the fact, like, this part in the books is, like, so drastically different. They really changed this for the show. So, I mean, I don't even know where to start. We know that there's a daughter of the Prince of Dorne who's not mentioned at all right now. Like, I believe the Sand Snakes eventually get imprisoned in the book. Like, it's completely different. So I think the show is going on its own path here.
I don't think we've even introduced Marcella again since she got chipped
I don't
away.
think so.
We
No.
just saw her in
Bonus
the distance,
question
didn't
when
we?
get to that.
Yeah,
Is it-
she's walking through the water gardens.
Oh. Bonus question when we get to that. Is that the same actress? Because I wouldn't know.
Don't think so.
No.
I think if I remember correctly, Amanda, too, to touch on this from the books of like the whole Dorne plot in the books for the most part. I don't know if, I mean, Bronn definitely isn't there
No.
because Bronn is
Bron's
definitely
everywhere.
given
What are you talking about?
Bronn's given a
Hmm.
larger part in the show than he is ever in the books. But I think
Right,
it's
yeah.
like one of the sand snakes is trying to not necessarily kidnap Marcella, but like take her and kind of like groom her to be queen of the Iron Throne or something like that, to basically like
Oh, you're
somehow
right. I
insert her
forgot.
into the Iron Throne. There,
Yeah, you're
basically.
right. I think it was the Prince of Dorne's actual legitimate daughter. Like she kidnaps Marcella and like is intending on declaring her queen, and then like she didn't know any of the of Dorne's quiet politics with the Targaryens, so she doesn't understand why she's never been married and she's just been ignored by her dad all her life or something like that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
she's upset she gets ignored when she gets trapped or placed in the tower as a prisoner. Yeah, like
Radically different.
yeah,
Radically different.
this is one part where again, because of the show surpassing where the books were, I mean they have the rough idea where everything ends up, but this is one of the plots that they just I think they format to fit the show to try to do something with some of these characters who they've already changed their plot in the show enough where they can't follow back into the books now. So they got to have them do something because they're still popular enough characters. They got to do something for a little while. I mean, they can't all be like Bran, who just gets completely left out of season 5. Spoiler alert.
Right, like, and I also think like this is something where since I know what happens in the show, I don't know since it's so radically different from the books if what's happening in the show, like if the end result is like the same or not, because it's just so different. So I mean, I'll give them this. At least they're keeping that one nice and secret for me because I don't know what's going to happen. George R. R. Martin, please finish writing the books.
He won't.
Random rabbit hole. Have we actually ever got a flashback in Game of Thrones?
Yeah. The beginning of season 5 there, we had Cersei
Oh, yeah.
meeting
Oh yeah,
the,
definitely.
the witch in the forest there.
Okay. I was just thinking about like I would like an Oberyn flashback. Like that would have made it because Oberyn, like it got to obviously with all things in Game of Thrones, it gets to be a character you're really fucking like, and then there's like, yep,
Oh yeah.
Ned Stark's gone, Oberyn's gone.
I remember
Like,
the internet constantly. I think I talked about that too. The internet constantly brought up of like they shouldn't have killed off Oberyn Martell. He was such a great character. It's like his death starts a chain of events in the books. I mean, his death is in the books, and it starts a chain of events that, much like Ned Stark dying, started a chain of events of everything happening there.
Imagine how different the show would have been if Joffrey would have been like, "Yep, Ned can keep his head."
And to the black fort with you.
To the wall.
Yeah.
To the wall.
Window, then the wall.
Yeah, window and then the wall. All right. Did you have another question, Steven?
If we have enough time and when we're done, I'll circle back, but no.
Okay. Circling up to you, Nick.
I'm trying to remember. I guess I had something towards the end of this episode, the very end. So I was going to talk about the Harpies a little bit, just to give credence in that. So I know. So I think we'll get there. I think there's a few more bits in between there, but that was really my biggest point was at the very end, and my grievance about that. So we'll come back to me because I don't want to jump right to the end.
No, we could jump right to the end and just how worthless the Unsullied are.
They are.
You wanna jump
How?
right in
I
there,
don't
Luke?
understand how that
And it
happens.
mattered.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So if we're doing it, yeah, just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yes, if we're doing it, we're doing it.
The Unsullied, there's like 8,000 of them, right? Are this great, huge force, super powerful. There's the Second Sons. Like, Dany has not an army, armies, plural, patrolling the city. Otherwise, what are they doing? And they're just getting smoked by these random little harpies that are jumping out. And I mean, I understand guerrilla warfare, like that you don't realize that they're dangerous people around you until they ambush you. So a small patrol can be attacked, sure. But there are 8,000 of, like, there shouldn't be a patrol smaller than, like, I don't know how many harpies there were in that scene, but a whole bunch of them jumped out at once. Anywho, as great a warrior as the Unsullied are supposed to be, like, they're getting stabbed, neck slit left and right in that episode, and it just seems like they all go down. My biggest grief is Barristan Selmy. Like, honestly, yeah, my heart goes out because this dude is supposed to be like the greatest warrior that ever lived. I know he's older and he's, outnumbered and he's ambushed, but even when he was in Westeros at the very beginning of the show, when he's dismissed by the king, he tells Joffrey and the Kingsguard, "Even now, I could slice through the five of you like it was nothing." Like, he is supposed to be that warrior. Even in his old age, he should be able to defend himself against random harpies with knives in the street. And he just is not. He gets smoked and he goes down. And this is my biggest gripe with this show, is that they build up a character to be somebody that we see they're not, and then they're killed unceremoniously. I think that Barristan Selmy's loss is a huge ding on Dany's side, because excuse me, he's such a great character and he's such a great counselor. Half the times when everybody else was saying, "Do this, be violent, be a Targaryen," he would counsel her against it, because the Mad King was such a terrible, terrible person, and he knows the horrors that a Targaryen ruler can do. And so Barristan Selmy's loss as her counselor in that aim is a terrible thing going forward. Gary.
I would agree. Like, I guess I didn't even think about it, but yes, it's very notable. All of the Unsullied are in full armor. Like, obviously,
Right.
they can still get their throat slit, but they're wearing leather body armor, which should mean that you can't easily be stabbed. Also, if they're trained warriors, maybe they got lackadaisical, they got a little fat, they settled in. But I still feel like if two of you get stabbed, at least you could give a little stabby on the way to death, because they're in leather armor. Unless the people that they're fighting, these harpies, are wearing armor, they're just former slave masters. Like, they're just in robes. They're not trained soldiers. Like, an army of, like, I don't know how many are in the hallway. The hallway is the most notable of, like, them knowing that they're in a battle. Like, some of the other places is guerrilla warfare. Them knowing they're in a battle. Like, you put your shields together, you put your spears over top, and just poke until the people cry and are dead. Like, just... I'm sure there's a name for it. Steven probably knows the name for...
Phalanx. It's a phalanx.
Thank you. But even they're surrounded on two sides. You put up shields on both sides and you work outward. Like, that was very atrocious. Also, Barristan Selmy, is it assumed he's not wearing armor in this?
No, he's wearing armor.
He's got some armor.
He's got some armor. Yeah.
Also, if you detract his quality of weapon, is it possible he doesn't have a Kingsguard sword? He has a hand-me-down, like, third-rate traveler, like, he killed a man to get his sword, sort of sword, like...
Beginner level sword.
He started the RPG quest, picked up the first sword on the way, and that's what he's been rocking with the entire time.
The whole time.
He does throw the sword down and say, "Here, King, melt it down with the rest of the swords." So yeah, he does give up the sword that he has as a Kingsguard.
It's literally like every video game where you have that great weapon and then you lose it some magical way in the first 2 minutes of the game, and you have to, like, go and get it back. So you start off with just this little thing.
Yep.
I mean, is that a fair point that, like, when he was in the Kingsguard, he probably worked his way up to have a very nice, very well-balanced weapon that fit his hand and was like an extension of his arm, and then he probably just, like, picked up...
Yes, but as a sword master, you're still going to be able to wield any or all those swords in a superb way. You might not be excellent, but you're still going to be superb.
Yeah,
so
the sword wasn't the problem for him there.
Yeah.
So to kind of jump in here, like, Gary, you hit the point there right on the head there with, like, you can kind of see maybe the Unsullied getting ambushed guerrilla warfare, like when they were two or kind of spread out slightly in some of the areas. But when they're locked in that hallway there, it's like you said, phalanx up there and just start poking them with the long sticks there. There's a bunch of people who break ranks, take their sticks out, and just go stabbing at people here, just all willy-nilly.
Until they cry and die.
Yeah, until they cry and die. Like, they go out there
Stabby.
willy-nilly and stuff like that. They don't even have swords on them, or they're not even using the swords that they have on them here. So they're sitting here trying to attack an enemy who's got the close range advantage on them with these long sticks here, and it's not working. And it's just so frustrating that it's like you hear nothing but these Unsullied or trained killers basically since they were young, and here they all die like cheap soldiers. And yes, pour one out for Barristan Selmy. He went out terribly. He's still alive in the books, thankfully, here. So, and then you read too that the actor was very unhappy about the way he went out of the show as well. So,
As he should be.
Really, I didn't hear that part too.
yep,
I didn't know that. That makes me happy, actually.
another
And so,
change
sorry.
from the book there, basically. Sorry, Steven, up to you.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't want to jump in on that. I'm going to dogpile on this and say exactly what everyone else said. It makes no damn sense at what happens here. And one of the things that actually makes the least sense to me is the weapons that the Unsullied are patrolling with. These are trained fighters from birth. They're not going to be. They have these spears or pikes, depending on how long they are. But you don't. Those are not long range weapons, but those are extended weapons. Those aren't weapons that you can use in a tight quarters. If you are patrolling city streets, you're going to be taking along a short sword with you, dagger, something to that extent where you can really wield that. You can't wield a pike in close quarters. You can't wield a spear in close quarters. You can barely wield a long sword in close quarters. That's just not how it works. And they just don't seem to have adapted even slightly to the tactics of the Harpies. They don't seem to adapted to the environment. And then I don't understand how the Harpies are so good at fighting. Everyone that would have been fighting when the city was taken over would have probably been on the walls. And what did Dany do to everyone who was fighting? She crucified everyone. They should be dead. So yes, I am fine with the idea that they are coming out of the woodworks and they are ambushing people. And it shouldn't be as effective as it is. There should be casualties. There should not be an entire slaughter of a guard unit. And if you are just walking around with 6 or 8 people, however much it was that they were walking around with, maybe you deserve it at that point. Maybe you don't have 2 squads walking back to back so you don't get ambushed like that in an area where you're known to get ambushed.
Right.
Maybe it's just me, but man, oh man.
Is this scene obviously it's just bullshit? The ambush, it's just to add some character, some character
Get rid of Barristan Selmy. He was too good.
Some emotional. I don't know. Is it just a cheap ploy to give some emotional depth to the scene because you have 2 main characters who are fighting for their lives? Is that the only reason that they're even in that scene? You could have just had Barristan Selmy get attacked. You wouldn't need both of them there, but it's supposed to. I don't know. I think it's just a cheap writing ploy. Nick?
I think it's to show the danger that the Harpies possess. Before this, we've seen 1 or 2 of them come out and be dangerous and be a threat, so it's a nuisance. But when 2 of her strongest commanders go down or are attacked, it shows how dangerous the Harpies actually are and how big of a credible threat they are. I mean, we haven't seen them attack in force with a group of, however many there were in this group up until now. So it really shows the danger that they possess. I think that's why. It's unfortunate that their target has to be someone that we really care about, like Grey Worm or Barristan Selmy. So, but that's just, I guess, how it was written. But yeah, I think it's done more so to show the danger that the Harpies possess. Steven?
That brings me to another point as well, and that point is, what were 2 generals doing walking around the city, which is known to be home to insurgents, without any bodyguards, without any troops? They have 1 squad of 8 men around them. I don't think even in today you would be walking around with generals just randomly around because they're going to get sniped. It's going to be...
Sir Barristan would probably have bodyguards, but he would probably have an accompanying force.
Yes, certainly. Because these are not just great fighters. We are looking at them as great fighters, and that's what we're talking about them as. They are also commanding generals, and they are political advisors. These are people who would have routines of people walking with them. Hell, they'd probably have a scribe there sitting the entire time noting down what they're telling them to do, like a adjunct or anything to that extent. And there's nobody. They're just I shouldn't say political fodder. They are screen fodder for the viewer. That's all they are.
Not nobody. Nobody's over in the House of Black and White.
That's a fair statement.
I was gonna say that certain military groups will memorize the uniforms of other enemy team troops, and so they'll know like, oh, that's a general, like you just said, Stephen, or oh, that's a lieutenant, and they'll know like who people are and what high priorities they should be. And it made me think about how when I don't remember his name because it's very hard to say, but the current guy who's always in Danny's camp, who is a one of the former masters
From the Seven
too,
Sons or the Second Sons.
No. The
no,
guy who
not
wants
Dario
the fighting
Naharis.
pits reopened, right?
The guy who wants
Oh,
the fighting
him.
pits.
Okay.
Yeah, he is there constantly, but also like Danny was being told there's like 300 people waiting in the hall or something like that, right? So there's lots of other masters that are walking into that chamber with Danny, and they see Barristan Selmy standing there, and Dario Naharis standing there, and Grey Worm standing there. So these other people, there would be lots of masters who could easily pick out Barristan Selmy from a crowd. And so, like, to your point of, oh, they'd get sniped if they walked through the halls, those people are known. You know, it's not like this is a time and a place where those people, you know, how would you know who that person is? Because you can't look up who that person is or know who they are on the internet. There are lots of masters who have probably been through asking innocent questions, maybe doing just reconnaissance on who those prominent leaders are. Well, heck, when the one random slave guy got his head chopped by Dario Naharis for killing the master, Barristan Selmy and Grey Worm and everybody else stood out in front of everybody else too. So those people, like the common people, see them. So all these Sons of the Harpy were like, oh man, how do these people know to go after these people who are the generals or whatever else? They're well known in the city.
Last question to kind of bring us back around to the book and the movie, and that's we're talking about an abject failure, a military failure, in tactical failure on the part of Danny's forces. Do we believe that this is just for the show, for the viewer, and basically bad writing, as Gary likes to say it? Or is this a symptom of maybe Danny not understanding the political complexity of what's going on and not re-equipping her forces, etc.?
I think it's just poor fucking writing. Like, Danny is a perfectly awesome character.
I'm. You can go ahead, Tyler.
I was gonna say it's bad writing. I mean, I can see the point you're trying to make about Danny's ineptitude of like adapting her forces towards the city and everything like that. But I think it's more of bad writing to try and show these harpies as a stronger force than they're really being taken. You know, like a stronger force than what they're taken to actually be here. Really, but it's just it's bringing in characters that we know and kind of like to kind of show them being in mortal danger in a spot when realistically they shouldn't be kind of in this situation. Nick.
I was going to say I think it's a little bit of both. I can see the laziness in the writing, but also in this episode too, we see that you know, there's consequences from this, right? Like, oh, a Unsullied got attacked in a brothel. That sets up the story arc of now they're adding more patrols. Now these more patrols mean more harpies are coming out of the woodwork and attacking the people. So there's a progression there, you know, an arms race as it were with the random troops in the city. I think it is a little bit of laziness, but at a certain point there has to be something there. Like the antagonists either have to win in this episode like we see they do, or the protagonists have to destroy the threat, which we haven't seen, may not see. And so I think that it seems like a lazy writing thing, but I mean we've had favorite characters get axed in this show already. So it's something we've seen before. I don't know. I'm kind of hesitant to just write it off as lazy writing. I think it's absolutely possible. I think it's plausible, but I think that they're trying to do something more with it. We just haven't seen the conclusion of what that is yet. To my discredit, I don't remember what happens at the end of the Harpies episodes. Like I don't, not to say that it's a small thing, but how it plays out, I'm not quite sure. I'm fuzzy on the details. You know, knowing, I think we've talked about this too before, we're not spoiling anything to say Game of Thrones is 8 seasons, and we're in season 5.
What?
So, they obviously don't last till the end of season 8.
This could count as one, Nick. Honestly.
There's no spoilers to say they don't last to the end of season 8, so something does conclude, but I don't remember how that goes. So it's interesting to see what will happen with them. Yeah, I think a little bit of both, lazy writing, but also they're trying to do something.
All right, I forgot who asked that question originally. Was that you, Steven, or was
That was Nick.
that was Nick? Okay, sorry.
But yeah, the death in the streets,
Do you have anything else?
crying and the dying and the stabby.
Did you have anything else, Nick?
Oh, no, that's just my biggest thing. My biggest regret is that Barristan Selmy died. I liked him as a character.
Amanda.
I don't think they confirmed that, did he? He just taking a nap.
He dropped. I thought they showed a solid scene where he laid there on the ground, and then Grey Worm ran over to help him, and then Grey Worm collapsed next to him, and that was the end of the scene.
Yeah, both him and Grey Worm are on the ground.
I assume from the number and location of the stabby stabs.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see in the next episode. Hopefully he's not, but I think that he may be.
I don't know, Gary. We've never seen this before, so who knows?
I forgot. As Nick said, I've forgotten a lot of this plot line for Daenerys because
I'm old.
It's a B plot line, and as we mentioned, it's not really. It jumps around a lot.
Daenerys has the best plot line of anybody in the show. Daenerys for queen.
I will set you on fire.
Amanda.
Well, turning our gaze back to the frigid north again, Jon Snow is up there assigning little letters or something that Sam's put in front of him. Oh, I got one fun fact. He even has to sign a letter to his favorite man, Roose Bolton, there for help. Doesn't want to, does it anyway. But Melisandre swings on by for a little conversation and tries to convince him to go with her and Stannis to Winterfell. She makes some very sounding things about, you chase out the rats or whatever. I just wanted to draw, it's not really a question, but to point out Stannis' journey here. He starts off when we first meet him as being all about honor. You did this. For Davos, he was like, I punished you for this and I rewarded you for this, blah, 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 blah. Also Stannis, oh, you swore a vow to the Night's Watch? Well, I want you to break it. And I just want to point out his journey here where he keeps doing things that are literally the opposite of honor. He keeps breaking oaths. He keeps breaking things and then going further and further on this path. Why I wouldn't what do we think that portends for him?
So I kind of wrote down here, I'm wondering if we're being shown of Stannis kind of turning a corner to be a somewhat decent person here. Because he has that wonderful interaction with his daughter there where he explains that, when you got the grayscale, I sent for every maester, apothecary, healer, and all of the 7 kingdoms to try and heal you. And once they did, you're my daughter here. You're my, Queen Shireen or whatever. So it's like a really touching scene between him. And it's like it's kind of like setting up here because he's talking to Jon. He's trying to support Jon. And we all like Jon I shouldn't say we. The general audience is made to kind of feel like they like Jon as a character there. So, Stannis is trying to help Jon, give Jon what he's always wanted of being rightfully named a Stark if Jon will just help him take over Winterfell and stuff like that. But it's kind of like, that was my question here is are we trying to be shown Stannis turning into a decent person? And I kind of think the show is trying to somewhat nudge you in that direction of, you should think Stannis is somewhat a decent person now. He should be the ruler of the Westeros there and sit on the Iron Throne because it's his by right. By golly.
It's a good point. They tried to they showed him the conversation with his daughter. They showed him actually helping the wall, no other ruler has shown yet.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I jumped in front of you there, Gary.
I was just gonna say, I think they're just trying, similar to Daenerys's plotline. I think they're just trying to expand out on a story that's not been written yet. Like, so I think they're just spending a lot more time with Stannis to try to build him up as a character. Like, I don't know. I sort of am starting to sense that in these seasons as they've killed off a lot of the characters you liked in previous seasons, that they need to start
And
building.
they're not introducing new characters either.
Yeah, they're just trying to like take these B storyline characters and try to improve the possibility they could be A storyline characters. So that's all I had. Nick?
I think that we've mentioned this before, but like going with the laws of this show, in truth, Stannis should be the rightful king. And I think I've said before too, like, you know, he's not the greatest person, but I do think, yeah, you're right. The show is trying to paint him as this wonderful person, and he does have a legitimate, not just a legitimacy to the crown and his claim, but also that he would be a good person because he is a great father, and because he does seem to, if he's stern, it's because he treats his troops fairly and justly, and he would be a good leader. So I think that they're trying to build him up to that. But yeah, there's a lot of undertone to what he's doing about having Jon break his vows. And you mentioned Melisandre too. Her advances to him completely undercut Stannis. Like, Jon's like, I thought that you were devoted to Stannis, and she's like, well, we don't have to tell him, right? I was just like, holy crap, that's completely out of the blue, because everything we've seen is that she has, you know, burned people alive for not saying that Stannis was doing right in everything he did. He's the chosen, so why in the world is Melisandre like getting naked for him? So it's just really, really interesting. There's a lot of undertone that there's something else going on that's the seedy underbelly of Stannis's camp. So yeah, I don't trust it. I don't really know. Even though he is the rightful king, or should be the rightful king, because he'd be next in line after Robert, there's a lot going on there that says that maybe that wouldn't be a good choice either. Steven.
Well, and one of the things that, I mean, you have to think about is that she's already gotten naked for another guy by this point in the movie, and that was what's his
right.
name?
Multiple other guys.
Multiple
Tommy.
other guys.
And
Gendry, thank you, Gendry.
He's still rolling his boat since season 3.
And so she didn't have the wherewithal to be able to lock, you know, Jon up here, but I don't think this is out of character for her at all to do that, and I don't think it's out of character her for at that. But I do want to note in this kind of area as well, Stannis also at one point is watching Jon train with the troops down there, and he's kind of looking like a devoted father, sort of like, this could have been my boy sort of thing. And his wife comes up and says, I'm sorry, I couldn't give you a son like that, obviously watching, and he does the good father thing. Oh, no, you gave me everything I wanted, blah, blah, blah. But I was just kind of struck on this rewatch how kind of he's how attached he is to Jon. Like, he thinks that this could have been my son almost, sort of thing. And it's that was interesting to me. I still think I'm sorry. I still think Stannis is you know, absolute something or another. And like I said, in the last episode, if Stannis approves of what you're doing, it's probably wrong, or at least you should, you know, review your options. But it was something I didn't pick up on watching it the first time through.
I think sort of going back to the previous conversations about Sansa and why we put her in Winterfell, I think Stannis also has maybe a reason to try to get Jon, because not only does Jon bring the power of the North, he's a legitimate, but once Stannis is king, you can install a loyal Warden of the North for him. Like, I think that's what does that make sense? Maybe that's what he's trying to build on, is if he becomes king, like, you need a Warden of the North who's not Roose Bolton, so you give Jon a sense that he owes you something by making you a true blood Stark and all of that. Steven?
So here's my issue with that. My issue is that it's Stannis we're talking about. He's not someone to forgive anyone going back on their promises. I mean, he took off how many of Davos's fingers for smuggling his own troops' food? So if Jon reneges on his promise to the Night's Watch and goes to be king of
Do you think he'll
anything,
go back on his word? He'll be like, "Oh, well, thanks for your help." Fun
yeah,
fact, gotta go
I-
back to the wall.
either that or he just kills him for like reneging on his promise. And I don't think one way or another that that's out of character for me. That doesn't make much sense to me, and that's not necessarily something that I would see Stannis being okay with.
So you're saying he wants Jon to join him, but at some later date he's gonna kill him for it?
Leave. Either that or either leave or kill him. Like, all right, so you did the good thing. Now comes the punishment.
That seems like a real shitty thing to do, but
That's
probably-
a very Stannis thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder, hey, here's a question. I wonder how long after Davos delivered those onions and saved his troops did it take for Stannis then to chop off his fingers?
Ooh.
Very true. Amanda, did you have anything else?
No.
All right, and then batting cleanup for us, Mr. Gary Delaney.
I think there's nothing I do that's clean.
Also true.
All of my points are really based on the interaction between Sansa and Littlefinger in the crypts. And it was kind of just on a rewatch, you realize that's the last home that Sansa has, is like she's the last Stark, and the only place she maybe feels comfortable is in the crypts, because that's where her father is, that's where her, like, all of her ancestors are, and that's where her aunt is. I don't think anybody else after her dad made it back to the crypts, but I think I'm pretty sure her father makes it back to the crypts.
Yes.
So that's where she feels like home. Like, also in this scene, you get another mention of Aunt Liara?
Liza.
Liza.
No.
Lyanna.
Yana.
Lyanna. Oh, Lyanna.
Lyanna.
Yeah, sorry.
Which kind of is a circle back to explaining how the revolution started. Also on the rewatch, I caught that Rhaegar was betrothed to Elia Martell. So that's
Yes.
the Viper's sister. No?
Yes.
No. Yeah, sorry. The Viper sister. Yep, sorry. My
That's
apologies.
the Viper sister. I guess another thing that I got lost in is I assumed that Elia Martell was married to the Mad King, because in the explanation it explained that the mountain killed Elia Martell and slaughtered her children. But I guess just things you didn't even realize is, like, I assumed that Elia Martell was Daenerys' mom, but in fact Elia Martell was Daenerys' sister-in-law.
Yes.
I don't know.
She was married to Rhaegar.
Rhaegar, yeah.
Married to Rhaegar.
I guess just things you learn on a rewatch was
His sister-in-law, yeah.
Yeah. So who was the Mad King? Who is the lady who the Mad King was married to?
His sister, Rhaena Targaryen.
Oh, so it's Targaryen.
I don't remember. I think she predeceased him, though.
Yeah, they were brother and sister though, just like all the Targaryens.
Fun. Nick is opening up a book that probably has way too much information.
That's how I roll.
Also in this scene, Littlefinger.
Rhaella.
Repeat that.
Rhaella Targaryen.
Rhaella. Okay. Announces that Sansa could be the Wardeness of the North if Stannis comes to Winterfell and wipes out the whoever the fuck we're on here. Boltons. Yeah. I have one last point on this scene, but I'll go to Tyler for a comment.
So I was going to kind of just expand, I think, on your thought there of what you were talking about of Sansa feeling at home more in the crypts. It's kind of like the one last place that hasn't been touched by anyone else, because Winterfell is currently being rebuilt from being burned there by Ramsay, essentially beforehand, that nobody really knows. But So it's not quite her original home, but the crypts are the one area that hasn't really been touched by anyone outside. It's just this is where her family is now buried there, pretty much. So it is the one untouched place from her childhood. Back to you.
Did Ramsay burn it, or did Theon Greyjoy burn it?
So
Ramsay said Theon burned it, but it was
Yes.
Ramsay.
Oh,
That way the
other
North
things
doesn't hate
that-
him.
right over Gary's head. The last thing was in that scene was that Littlefinger kisses Sansa. Is this just a mind game of like him trying to like keep her under his control? Like, I don't know.
He wanted to.
Tyler?
So I think we talked about this a lot when we were talking about this whole situation from the last episode of Peter makes the comment like he thinks basically everything is going to go as planned. Stannis is going to come in because he's the better general. He has the bigger army and stuff like that, when he's not taking into account that Winterfell is a very impenetrable fortress there to take over. But he thinks
Right.
Stannis is going to come in, take care of the Boltons. Sansa is going to be liberated then from the Boltons and become basically the wardeness of the North, placed by Stannis there. And then that allows then Baelish to move in and probably marry Sansa, as we think he's setting up there. So he's planting that seed there as well, which then further gives Baelish more power in his quest for ruling over the Ashes there. So that's my thought there of him just kind of planting that seed there. Amanda.
I firmly just believe he's trying to marry Sansa. Like, I think he's just replacing the fact that Catelyn never cared for him in return, and not in that way. I think he's just replacing her with Sansa, and that's his plan.
He's just emotionally scarred and loved her mother and just
Right.
yeah,
I mean, what they even put it in that one. Who does Littlefinger think deserves a feather bed other than Littlefinger? Sansa. Like, I feel like that she's a goal. He's got other goals too, but this one's a major one.
Do you think it was some sort of mind game that like he secretly kind of senses that Sansa maybe is intrigued by him and he just needs to keep a little bit of sexual tension going there?
I don't know. Honestly, I'm just confused as to if he's counting on Stannis coming in. My question is, I keep going back to, why is he bothering with the whole thing for the Boltons anyway? Why didn't he just wait and then move? If he thinks Stannis would just appoint her wardeness of the North anyway, what was the point of going up there? I can't figure out what he means by that.
I think it's
Almost
just-
as if there was bad writing.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's just the consequences of consolidating characters so much in the show to try and air quotes streamline the story.
It's really striking how much the consolidation of characters really starts hitting home about now. And I've been messaging the group this a little bit as well, but it's also impressive to see the stagnation in viewing that happens over season 5, season 6, and season 4. Like, there's not a very high increase in viewers. In fact, I believe the average number of viewers between season 4 and 5, or is it 5 and 6, are exactly the same. It just stays constant. It doesn't go up. And I think that there's just they start losing a little bit here. I don't know what their game plan was going into season 5, but they could have introduced more of the characters back. Find some way to bring them in and put them back in these plot lines. But this is just, it gets ridiculous, and they're pushed into weird situations like what we're talking about now because consolidation and a refusal to go off of anything else.
I mean, not to give the writers really much of a pass here, because my feelings will become very well known about them towards the end of this thing. But I think also too, it's like you're dealing with a book series that has done nothing but expand outwards basically since George started writing this thing way back when here. So I mean, if you're trying to adapt this thing for TV, I mean, you definitely could have gone longer here than the 8 seasons that they did, or 7, if we 7.5, or whatever we're going to call the last 2 seasons combined there. Could have definitely done more, but like, I think the problem they're running into here is like with the books never being finished when the show wrapped up here and stuff, is you don't see how a lot of these plot points in the book really play out with some of these characters who they cut out of the show. here. Like I think I've brought him up before, the fake Aegon Targaryen that is making his way towards Westeros there. We don't know what he does to the plot basically of the overall story, because that part hasn't been finished in the books yet there, but he's completely cut out of the show, never mentioned or anything, like this plot line is never mentioned or anything like that. So does that removal of that character do a lot of shifting, unnecessary shifting for the show to try and make the show logically seem? And again, something we don't know just because the books haven't been finished and the show went the way the show went. Gary.
Is this about the point where they had an end timeline? I know that I think before the beginning of the 7th season, I thought he said that I had 6 hours left of story to tell, or maybe that was before the beginning of the 8th season.
So I believe they were given kind of an outline from George. I would imagine once they got closer, I think probably, I almost want to say maybe around this point in time. I could be completely wrong with that. And then I think the line you're thinking of is before season 7 started, they had 13 hours of story left to tell. And when I heard that instantly stuck in my mind, because I'm like, that's a very oddly specific number of hours left of a story to tell that you still have a lot of stuff to wrap up on. But we'll get to that part when we get to those seasons.
I ask if this is just the point where, like, obviously there's no more books, and they probably, even internally, I'm sure they can only release so much information to the writers themselves, like, because this was a very leaked thing, like, so I'm wondering if maybe the writers only knew what to write one season at a time.
Well, season 5 still encompasses some of the books, so there are plots from the books that still happen in season 5. And I would imagine, though, they were given a rough outline of where everything ends up, which a rough outline to follow is very different than multiple volumes of a book story here to follow there of where everything ends up. You miss a lot of the fine details that help move the story along.
Yeah. Anyway, more to come on poor writing and the train wreck.
General lack of foresight. Yeah.
Are we at the midpoint of this season now?
So
No.
This was episode 4. So starting for the next watch is episode 5 and 6. Well, actually, this is the midpoint. No, wait, no, there's 10 episodes still. Sorry. There's 10 episodes.
Next is the midpoint.
So the next show for us will be the midpoint of the season. But I just
exactly.
Yeah, this season is. I honestly just had less notes this season, like, because they're just not.
And writers, I want you to explicitly know that if Gary has less notes on this, Gary has reams of notes, binders full of notes. And if he does not have notes on the season, it means you done fucked up.
All right. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to talk about? All right.
Nope, you got the stuff that I was thinking about.
Cool. Well, we have reached the end of our episode then. So as we've discussed here, for next time, we will be watching episode 5, Kill the Boy, and episode 6, Unbound, Unbent, Unbroken.
Story of the City of Dorne.
The City of Dorne. Watch the introduction next time, guys. To just pay close attention.
I'm going
to.
to. I've been
I'm going to have to go back and watch this one, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also hoping Hero the Revolution.
All right, well, as always, thanks everybody for listening. We hope you have a good one. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.